What would you do if a stranger in a fake uniform walked into your home, twisted your wife's arm until it snapped, and told you to stop asking questions? Most people would back down. Most people would be too afraid to push further. But not us. That attack didn't silence us. It lit a fire that exposed murder, millions in stolen money, and a suburban empire of corruption. This isn't just a story about homeowners and garden fees. It's about bikers roaring into hospitals, secret recordings, and a confession so shocking it was broadcast live to thousands of people. By the end, you'll see exactly how one corrupt woman's empire collapsed, and how trying to bury the truth only made it rise stronger. And before we begin, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, because the stories I'm about to share are ones you won't find anywhere else. I'll never forget that day. I came home and found my wife Emma lying on the kitchen floor. Her face pale, her breath short, her arm bent at an angle no arm should ever be bent. At first, I thought she'd slipped, but when I saw the fake badge on the tile beside her, knew someone had been in our house. Someone had done this deliberately, Emma whispered through the pain. This wasn't random. They wanted to shut me up. And I believed her. Emma wasn't just anyone in the neighborhood. She was a former prosecutor who ran a legal blog. Not a small one, either. She had 500,000 readers who trusted her to shine a light on scams, frauds, and consumer abuse. She had spent years exposing corruption, and she had recently turned her attention to our homeowners association, the HOA, for 2 years. Our HOA fees had skyrocketed from $200 a month to $800, 400%. Families were furious. Neighbors whispered about moving. But every time someone asked questions, the president of the HOA, Diane Blackwood, brushed them off. She always smiled that perfect suburban widow smile, dressed in pearls and heels, claimed the money was going toward community improvements. Emma didn't buy it. She requested the records. She dug into the invoices. And that's when she pulled me in. I'm a construction engineer. Numbers don't lie to me. When Emma showed me the paperwork for the neighborhood's new Memorial Rose Garden, my jaw dropped. The invoices claimed $3.8 million had been spent on landscaping. But I'd walked past that garden dozens of times. It was just a few flower beds and a basic sprinkler system. 10 grand, maybe 20, at most. Not millions. This doesn't add up, I told her. And Emma's instincts flared. She wrote a blog post. Where did $3.8 million go? Within a day, it exploded 200,000 views. Thousands of comments. People from all over America sharing their own HOA horror stories. She'd struck a nerve. That's when Diane turned from polished suburban queen to ruthless operator. First came the cease and desist letters, claiming Emma was defaming her. Then, anonymous IRS threats in the mail. Then advertisers getting emails urging them to drop Emma's blog. But Emma didn't scare easy. She doubled down. And that's when Diane stopped playing games. The man who walked into our house Tuesday morning called himself Senior HOA Enforcement. He wore a municipal-looking uniform, clipboard, badge, the whole act. Emma tried to question him, tried to photograph his ID, but instead of answering, he grabbed her arm and twisted. Hard. The sound of bone snapping echoed through the kitchen. When I rushed in, he was leaving behind the fake badge on our floor, and my wife writhing in agony. The hospital doctors confirmed it. Not just a break-in, intentional, strategic break, designed to cause maximum pain and longest recovery. Emma's prosecutorial brain kept working through the haze of pain. She whispered, "This was a warning. They want me to stop." But if you know Emma, you know that warnings only make her dig deeper. I realized then that the police wouldn't be enough. Diane had escalated this into something the system couldn't contain. So I stepped outside the hospital and made a phone call that would change everything. I called my cousin Tommy Tank Rodriguez, 6'4", scars, muscle, and the leader of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club, ex-detective turned biker. When I told him what happened, he didn't hesitate. "Say no more, little cousin," he said. "Nobody touches family. We're rolling out." 20 minutes later, the roar of Harley-Davidsons filled the hospital parking lot. 12 bikes, chrome shining, engines shaking the ground. People stopped in their tracks as leather-clad bikers stormed through the hospital corridors. And when Tommy saw Emma Pele arm in a cast, trying to smile through the pain, his jaw clenched like steel. He picked up the fake badge Max Steel had dropped, studied it, and said quietly, "Whoever did this picked the wrong family." The hospital corridors went silent as the Iron Wolves filed in. 12 leather-clad bikers, each one carrying years of scars and hard lessons. now standing guard over my wife. But at the center was Tommy Tank Rodriguez. Tommy wasn't just muscle, he was once a detective. And when he saw Emma lying there, arm broken by a fake officer, I knew something inside him had snapped. He examined the badge Max had dropped, turning it over with a trained eye. "This isn't street crime," he said. "This was professional. Someone paid for this." Emma, even through her pain medication, gave him the faintest smile. "Then I must be close to the truth." That's when Tommy brought in someone special, our cousin Rico, known in the club as Blade. Unlike the others, Rico didn't look like a biker at all. Clean-cut, quiet eyes glued to a laptop. He was their secret weapon, a former computer analyst who'd left government work under mysterious circumstances. Within hours, Rico hacked into the hospital's security feeds. Multiple camera angles showed Max Steele walking into our home and then leaving after the attack. Rico ran facial recognition and got a hit. Max was a former military contractor with a record of enforcement work for shady clients. But the real breakthrough came when Rico followed the money. Max had been paid $25,000 through transfers. The source: accounts controlled by none other than Diane Blackwood. The room went cold. Emma's eyes widened. Tommy clenched his fists. Diane, the woman who had smiled through charity events and lectured us about lawn heights, had hired a professional to break my wife's arm. But Rico wasn't finished. He dug deeper into Diane's finances. And there it was: suspicious payments. Around the same time, journalist Kevin Walsh had disappeared 18 months earlier. Walsh had been investigating HOA corruption too. His last cell phone ping, right near Diane's property, Rico, had even found a cloud backup of Kevin's unfinished article. The title: HOA Corruption, the Suburban Money Laundering Scheme. And buried in the draft, he had mentioned the same shady companies Emma had uncovered: Meadowbrook Community Enhancement, Suburban Infrastructure Development. Shells Diane used to funnel stolen money. Tommy stood tall, his face like stone. She didn't just embezzle, she eliminated the journalist who got too close. And now she's trying to silence Emma the same way. The Iron Wolves didn't even need to vote. The decision was unanimous. Diane had to be exposed, once and for all. Their plan wasn't simple revenge. Tommy insisted it had to be justice. That meant evidence, surveillance, and pressure enough to make Diane crack under the weight of her own guilt. So the wolves got to work. From that night on, Diane was never alone. Tohali's would always be parked within sight of her mansion. Not breaking laws, not saying a word, just watching. At the grocery store, at her lawyer's office, outside board meetings, there they were, arms folded, eyes locked. And behind the scenes, Rico was conducting psychological warfare. He hacked Diane's smart home system. At 3 a.m, lights flickered. Her TV turned on by itself, always tuned to crime documentaries. Her smart speakers whispered audio recovered from Kevin Walsh's phone, replaying his last recorded questions about HOA corruption. Rico even watched her through her own cameras, seeing her pacing her halls at night, triple-checking locks, whispering to herself. The woman who once looked untouchable was unraveling fast. But Diane wasn't finished. She called Max again, desperate. "Handle them," she ordered, meaning the bikers. Max tried. But intimidating a lone woman in her kitchen was nothing compared to facing 20 iron wolves at a gas station. They surrounded him, leather and chrome, closing in from every side. Tommy spoke quietly but firmly. "You broke our family's arm. We don't forgive that. You're done." Max backed off, shaken, and when Rico later showed him proof that Diane planned to eliminate him too, just like she had Kevin Walsh, Max realized his only way out was to switch sides. He handed over everything: recordings, payment receipts, video clips of meetings with Diane. The most damning file of all, a recording of Diane herself, panicked and confessing, "After Emma's attack, I had to eliminate that journalist. He was going to destroy everything I built. And now this blogger is asking the same questions. She has to be stopped permanently." Emma heard that audio. Tears streamed down her face. Finally, she whispered, "Proof no lawyer can erase." But Tommy wasn't satisfied. He wanted more. He wanted Diane to confess publicly, with no way to spin, deny, or bury the truth. The trap would be set in the one place Diane feared most, the Memorial Rose Garden. Because buried under those rose bushes wasn't just fraud. It was Kevin Walsh himself. By now, Diane Blackwood's perfect suburban mask was crumbling. The woman who once strolled through neighborhood events in pearls and heels was pacing her house at night, muttering to herself, terrified of shadows. The Iron Wolf's presence was relentless. Two bikes always parked nearby. No threats, no words, just the weight of being watched. And behind it all, Rico kept tightening the screws. Lights flickering, speakers whispering Kevin Walsh's voice. Her television suddenly blasting true crime shows at 2 a.m. She couldn't sleep, she couldn't eat, and she was running out of options. That's when she called Max Steele, in a panic. "Meet me at the garden at midnight. We need to move him before they find him." Rico was already listening, recording every word. Diane had just confessed there was something in the rose garden. Something she didn't want anyone to find. What she didn't know was that Max had switched sides. He was recording too. He had hours of Diane admitting to paying him. Hours of her whispering about Kevin Walsh. Hours of her plotting ways to silence Emma permanently. Tommy saw the opening. "We make her confess where the whole world can see," he said. The plan was simple, but brutal. Lure Diane to the rose garden. Have Max push her into talking. Record everything. And this time, stream it live so no expensive lawyer or shady connection could bury the evidence. The night came. Midnight. The Memorial Rose Garden was quiet, moonlight spilling across flower beds that were supposed to symbolize peace and community. Instead, they covered up Diane's darkest secret. Tommy positioned the wolves in the shadows. Rico set up hidden cameras and routed the feed to secure servers. By the time Diane arrived, thousands of people were already watching live. When she stepped out of her car, she was barely recognizable. Her hair messy, her clothes wrinkled, eyes darting in every direction. She clutched a shovel in one hand, a duffel bag in the other. Max was waiting near the center of the garden, exactly where Rico's ground-penetrating radar had flagged disturbed soil. "We need to work fast," he told her, voice urgent. "The bikers know everything. They're bringing people here tomorrow morning." Diane panicked. How could they know about Kevin? "I buried him so deep. I used lime. I planted the roses right on top." The live stream chat exploded. Thousands of viewers typed in shock as Diane casually revealed what she had done. She kept talking, her words tumbling out faster, desperate. "I didn't mean to kill him at first. Kevin was supposed to back off like the others, but he wouldn't stop. He kept asking questions, kept digging. And when he showed up at my house with documents, I couldn't let him leave." Every word was captured. Every confession streamed to thousands. And that's when Tommy stepped out of the shadows. 6'4", leather jacket gleaming under the moon. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just said, in a calm voice that carried across the garden, "Actually, Diane, Kevin wasn't the only one you hurt. You also made the mistake of hurting our family." Rico emerged from behind a plaque, his cameras recording openly now. The look on Diane's face, shock, rage, terror, was burned into my memory forever. "You set me up," she screamed at Max. Max shook his head. "It's over. Everyone heard you. Everyone." For a second, silence hung heavy in the night. Then, Diane made her last, desperate move. From the duffel bag, she pulled out a pistol. She leveled it at Max, eyes blazing. "If I'm going down," she spat, "I'm taking you with me, and anyone else who knows." The air froze. Rico dove for cover. Tommy was too far to reach her. My heart stopped. This could be the end. But Diane had underestimated Tommy's years as a detective. With one practiced motion, he hurled a flashbang grenade at her feet. Light and sound exploded, blinding her, disorienting her. Her shot went wild into the night sky. When the smoke cleared, Tommy had her pinned to the ground, zip ties cutting into her wrists. The pistol skittered across the concrete. Diane sobbed, broken, desperate, defeated. "I'm sorry," she muttered, over and over. "I just wanted to protect myself. Protect what I built." Sirens wailed in the distance. Tommy had timed it perfectly. Police cars screeched into the parking lot, lights flashing red and blue. Officers poured into the garden, already briefed on the situation, already knowing what they were about to find. And there she was, Diane Blackwood, former HOA president, the woman who terrorized our neighborhood, arrested at midnight, caught on livestream, standing above the very ground where Kevin Walsh was buried. Emma arrived just as Diane was being led to the car, her arm still in a cast, but her spirit unbroken. She wheeled herself in front of Diane, looked her in the eye, and said loud enough for the cameras to catch it, "You broke my arm to silence me. Instead, you made me famous. And now the whole world knows what kind of monster you really are. I was just trying to protect myself." Emma didn't blink. "You should have thought about that before you hired a thug to hurt innocent people." Neighbors had gathered by then. watching as Diane was shoved into the police cruiser. Some murmured in disgust, others in relief. And through it all, Rico's livestream kept rolling, tens of thousands of people watching justice in real time. For Kevin Walsh, for Emma, for every family that had been robbed by Diane's schemes. The empire Diane built on lies and intimidation had crumbled in a single night. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse watching Diane Blackwood face the one thing she could never manipulate: justice. The woman who once demanded perfect lawns and collected inflated fees now wore an orange jumpsuit and shackles. The same woman who'd smiled at charity galas and called herself a pillar of the community now stood small and defeated before a federal judge. The charges were read out one by one: premeditated murder, conspiracy, assault, fraud, embezzlement. Each word was another nail in the coffin of her carefully built facade. The recordings, the live stream, the financial records. There was no wriggling out. When the sentence came, the courtroom held its breath. Life in prison without the possibility of parole, the judge declared, plus additional decades for the financial crimes. Diane barely reacted. Maybe she already knew. Maybe the weight of everything she'd done had finally crushed her. The restitution order seized millions in assets, returning stolen money to families in every community she had victimized. HOA corruption wasn't just a scandal anymore, it was a national story. For Emma, the trial was more than justice. It was transformation. Her blog, once a niche site about consumer rights, exploded into a national platform. Daily readers jumped from 500,000 to over 2 million. Publishers offered her a book deal. She titled it, Fake HOA Officers: My Fight for Truth. It became a bestseller, and soon after, Netflix came calling for a documentary. The attack meant to silence her had done the opposite. It gave her a louder voice than ever before. Emma became a national advocate for HOA reform, testifying before state legislatures, guiding families trapped in abusive neighborhoods, and building a foundation to provide legal aid to those fighting corruption. And her arm. The cast eventually came off. She worked through therapy until she regained her strength. One day she told me, "They tried to break me. Instead, they built me stronger." The rest of us changed to. My own career shifted after the publicity. Construction firms and government agencies suddenly wanted me, the guy who could look at an invoice and spot a $10,000 job inflated into $3.8 million of fraud. I became a senior engineer, specializing in investigating municipal corruption. Who knew Rose Garden math could change your life? Rico turned his talents into a business: cybersecurity consulting for towns, HOAs, and municipal boards. Communities across the country hired him to monitor their books and expose fraud before it spiraled out of control. For the first time in years, he was making money legally, and more of it than ever. The Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club transformed. What started as a rough brotherhood became something bigger. Protectors. They partnered with law enforcement, providing visible deterrence in communities plagued by corruption. Tommy himself was offered a job as a private investigator, though he chose to stay with the Wolves. "We protect our own," he said. And now, our own meant entire neighborhoods. The community itself healed. Once Diane's crimes were exposed, neighbors came together. The old HOA was dissolved, replaced with a transparent resident-run association. No more inflated fees. No more shady contracts. Every dollar spent was voted on openly. Families felt relief, like a weight had been lifted. The Rose Garden, once Diane's monument to fraud, was rebuilt as the Kevin Walsh Truth Garden. His remains were finally recovered and buried properly, with a plaque that read, "In memory of Kevin Walsh. Truth always surfaces." At the dedication, Emma planted the first new flowers. Hundreds gathered: neighbors, journalists, even federal investigators. For once, the community wasn't divided by fear or suspicion. They were united by healing. Kevin's family finally had closure, and his legacy lived on through a scholarship fund for young journalists, giving others the chance to keep asking hard questions. But Diane's story didn't end in the courtroom. Even behind bars, she refused to take full responsibility. Sources told us she spent her days watching Netflix documentaries, including the one about her own downfall. Irony at its cruelest. She claimed, even then, that she had only been trying to protect her community, but nobody believed her anymore. She wasn't a protector. She was a predator who hid behind the mask of suburban respectability. And the irony was this: if she'd simply answered Emma's first question, "Where did $3.8 million go?" she might have survived in obscurity. Instead, her attempts to bury the truth only made it explode into the light. Emma often ends her speeches with the same words. Diane Blackwood learned the hardest lesson of all. When you attack someone's family, you don't just make enemies. You create legends. And legends don't forget. They don't forgive. And they don't lose. Sometimes justice comes from courtrooms. Sometimes it comes from the streets. But it always comes when people refuse to stay silent. That night in the Rose Garden proved her right. And that's the incredible story of how fake HOA officers learned not to mess with the wrong family. If you enjoyed this tale of corruption and justice, smash that like button. What do you think? Did Diane get what she deserved? Or should the consequences have been even harsher? Drop a comment below, and I'll see you in the next one.